Catherine from Jane Catherine on Books, and here we are with our second short story read. My last video on the short story collection, I featured all the books that we're going to be looking at in October, so you'll be able to reference back to those if you want to see what I'm going to be covering. And today the one that I've chosen is Catching the Light by Mary Grand. Okay. And the story that I'm going to be reading is actually the title story, Catching the Light. Now it's rather a long short story, so I'm just going to read the last section of this, which I don't think spoils the overview of the story, but I just couldn't fit it all into a reasonable size video for you. Okay, so here we go. Again, I have to say that this is copyrighted to Mary Grand, and I have not been asked by her to use this as one of my short story reads, and obviously my thoughts and opinions about this are my own, but hopefully you like this. This is a really lovely story that caught my eye. Again, glasses off to read. And so I found myself downstairs on the first morning of my honeymoon, watching the dawn. I had applied a lot of makeup over the angry bruises and crept down early. Through the window I watched the sunrise, lighting the sky miraculously with a riot of colours, so much beauty in the midst of so much pain. However, this was a new day, and I resolved to make it a new start. I looked down and noticed a box on the windowsill. I reached out towards it with a shaking, bruised hand, but I stopped. I could hear Steve upstairs. He would be down soon, wanting his breakfast. Quickly I put the kettle on and set the table while he showered. Soon he was springing down the stairs. I held my breath. But he looked over and smiled broadly. "Gosh, aren't you wonderful making breakfast for your new husband? Whatever did I do to deserve you?" I breathed a sigh of relief. Steve looked out of the window. "Look at that weather, a perfect day." He came over, kissed me, and we had breakfast while he told me the plans for the day. For the first time I noticed that he did not consult me, but I quickly dismissed the thought and decided to be grateful that someone cared enough to organise a lovely day for me. We drove to the coast and walked along the cliff tops. The views were stunning. That evening we went back to the cottage. It had been such a lovely day. The evening before had been such a bad dream. "Shall we go to the local pub?" I suggested. "Is it any good?" Owen said it is. Steve looked at me. I regretted mentioning Owen, but his face cleared. "Of course." We went downstairs to change. I was quicker than him and went down to get a drink of water. Then I looked over at the windowsill at the box I had noticed that morning. It must be the one Owen had told me about. I heard Steve go into the bathroom upstairs. I went over and picked it up. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a crystal, small and delicate. It looked like a mini cathedral. I picked it up in awe and put it carefully in the sunshine on the windowsill. It seemed to reach out and catch the light. It shimmered and glittered. I heard Steve coming down the stairs, so I quickly put it away. It was a lovely evening for a walk. The pub was busy, the smell of food inviting. After we had eaten, a man from behind the bar came over. "Hi, I'm Harry, a friend of Owen," he said, "to look out for you." "How lovely," I replied. "We've had a fantastic day and a wonderful meal." He smiled but looked at my face. "Had a fall?" "Oh yes, I'm terribly clumsy." He smiled and went to get us coffee. On the walk back to the cottage, Steve said, "I saw you flirting with the chap behind the bar. We won't go there again." It was nonsense, but there was no point in arguing. When we got in, Steve opened another bottle of wine. I saw my phone on the sideboard and picked it up, wondering if my mother had sent a text. Steve came over and took it off me, laughing. "No phones," he said, and put it in his pocket. I put the TV on, but we couldn't get a picture. Steve tried fiddling with various buttons on the remote, but nothing worked. "I really want to see golf." You could ring Owen, he must know what to do. He frowned. Ring Owen? Yes. No, we can sort this out. I sat on a chair and watched as he got increasingly irritated and frustrated. Maybe we should phone, I suggested quietly. Shut up about Owen, Steve shouted. I stood up and walked to the window. What's that on your chair? He demanded. What? There, it's another remote. Well, I didn't see it. You must have, you were hiding it. He pointed it at the TV, pressed a button and everything cleared. Steve rushed over to me. You just wanted to ring Owen, didn't you? No. You were seeing if you had a message from him earlier, I saw you. No. I turned quickly, my arm caught a vase that went crashing to the floor. You stupid bitch, he shouted. I bent down to clear up the pieces. Steve grabbed my arm and threw me across the room. I hit the cold stone floor and tried to get up, but he came over shouting at me. I was a fool to marry you. Then he kicked my arms, my body and my legs, and I curled up. I was very scared, frightened he would kill me. Every part of me was in agony. Finally he stopped, left me crying on the floor, grabbed the wine bottle and went to bed. I lay very still for a while, then slowly got up. I crawled up onto the sofa. How had this happened? I had read about men who beat their wives, but that was other people, not me. I curled up on the sofa crying. Then I remembered the crystal. I went over to the windowsill and took it out of the box. I didn't expect it to shine, not at night. However, the crystal seemed to reach out to the moon, catching its light, and seemed to glow. I peered out, down the long, dark garden. I could swear I saw the tiny lights I'd seen the night before, sparkling in the distance on the edge of the woods. Quietly I opened the back door. I picked my way down the winding stone path and through the field. Then I stopped. I heard music and walked towards it. The music was gentle, seductive, plucked harps like raindrops. I saw a circle of lights. Instinctively, I knew these were Twyla Teg. I could see them clearly now, small beautiful creatures with long blonde hair dancing in a circle. Slowly one fairy turned and looked at me. She beckoned me to join them, but I shook my head. Instead I sat on the grass curled up and listening to the music. Eventually I fell asleep. When I woke it was dawn. The fairies had gone. It was cold and damp. I walked stiffly back to the cottage. Of course, when he came down, Steve was sorry. It would never happen again. Each day we went out for walks, even though I was exhausted. Steve shopped in the village, and we ate in the cottage every evening. Once, when I was waiting in the car for Steve to do some shopping, I was startled by a knock on the window. I looked up. It was Harry. Nervously, I looked round for Steve, but he was still in the shop. Harry knocked again. I opened the door and peered out. You didn't come back. Something wrong with the food? He asked, laughing. No, of course not. We've been eating in. You all right? Fine. Oh, there's Steve. Bye then. In the evenings, Steve always drank. Sometimes he taunted me, made me feel small and stupid. Sometimes he hit and kicked me. It was like I had ended up in some terrible nightmare. The only escape each evening was when he fell asleep. I would creep down the garden. The music would draw me towards the fairies. Each time the same fairy, my fairy, would turn and invite me to join them. I didn't, but I would sit mesmerised by the dance and the music. At dawn, when the fairies had left, I crept back to the cottage. Finally, the last night of our honeymoon came. We ate our evening meal in silence. I was numb with tiredness and misery. Every part of my body seemed bruised and ached. When we went to bed, I lay awake as Steve snored noisily beside me. I lay on my back, very still, eyes opened, too frightened to move. To think in the early hours in the morning, I crept downstairs and looked out at the darkness. Tomorrow I would be going home. What the hell was I going to do? What was I going to tell the girls in the office? I heard a creaking behind me, looked up, and Steve came down the stairs. I'm sorry, I was just getting a drink, I said quickly. I've been thinking about when we go back home. His voice was cold. Yeah, it'd be strange to go back, I said. I could see Steve watching me. I felt sick with fear. You will not be going back to work. What? You're not going back to work. You're not going back to that Owen. Your place is at home now, he sneered. Steve, I pleaded. Please, I need to go back to work. I promise I won't talk to him. You must think I'm stupid. I backed against the wall, but he came storming over and went to grab my arm. I managed to pull away and ran towards the fireplace. He followed and then went to grab a brass poker. I was sure then that he wanted to kill me. Frantically I ran to the back door. Thank God it wasn't locked. I pulled it open and ran into the darkness. I could hear Steve behind me shouting and swearing, but kept running through the field and into the woods. I could hear the music and ran towards it until I reached the circle of lights. As I approached, my fairy turned and looked at me. I nodded. I would join them. I hoped forever. It was the only way to escape. It would be the end of the torment, the hell. I kept running towards the circle, but Steve caught up and grabbed my arm. I tried to pull away. He lifted the poker over my head. I froze. Without warning, a brilliant flash of light struck the poker. It blazed red hot. Steve screamed and dropped it. There was another blinding flash. This time it was like a streak of lightning. It shot through his body. I watched in horror as, instantly, his appearance changed. His features became wrinkled and old, his hair thin and grey. Silently, he fell to the ground. I was aware of a feeling of warmth creeping through my body. The pain and the bruises were healing. I felt whole and strong. I turned to the fairies. I tore off my diamond ring and tossed it into the circle. My fairy winked at me and grinned. The sky was getting lighter. It was nearly dawn. I watched as the fairies and the ring faded away. Stunned, I stood, staring at Steve lying very still on the ground. Oh God, was he dead? Slowly I became aware of voices behind me, then recognised the voice shouting my name. I turned and saw Owen. He came straight to me and hugged me, holding me close. Harry was with him. He pushed past us and knelt beside Steve. He checked his pulse and phoned for an ambulance. He's alive. Not sure what's happened here, though. I saw Harry looking around, mystified. I stepped back from Owen's arms and glanced up at him. Did Harry call you? Yes, he was really worried, so I came. You'll be all right now, I promise. Harry called over. Owen, take Erin back to the cottage. She looks fit to drop. I'll wait here for the ambulance. Together we walked back through the woods and across the field. When we were close to the cottage, I looked through the window and saw the crystal. It was bright, glistening, reaching out, catching the light of the new day. I think that guy got his comeuppance there, Steve, in the end. So although we got a bit of a fairy tale ending there, just shows how some people have to suffer domestic violence on a regular basis. And I think this story is really important for people to get an understanding of what it's like to live with that. So, there we go. Another short read. See you next time. Bye for now.